of which means that the table looks like this. Liverpool have a 6-point lead over their closest challengers, Arsenal and Nottingham Forest. They do still have a game in hand, which we know is all but guaranteed to take place on February the 12th. Forest level on points with the Gunners in third. Manchester City back into the top four after their thrashing of Ipswich. Bournemouth climb after their impressive win at St James's Park. And Brighton and Fulham round out the top 10. Meanwhile, at the other end of the table, all of the bottom three failed to pick up any points this weekend. So Wolves will be hoping to capitalise that by getting something out of their game with Chelsea this evening to give themselves a little bit of breathing room. Everton's win over Spurs means they're 4 points below Tottenham. Remarkably, Tottenham are down in 15th. Manchester United in 13th following their loss at home to Brighton. And with us in the studio to discuss all of that, Glenn Hoddle and Julien Laurent. And we wanted to talk about Ruben Amorim's comments about Manchester United. So let's hear what he had to say.
In 10 games in Premier League, we won 2. I know that. Imagine what is this for a fan of Manchester United. Imagine what is this for me. So we are getting a new coach that is losing more than the last coach. I have full knowledge of that. Like I said, I'm not going to change, no matter what. And I know we can succeed, but we need to survive this moment because I'm not naive. And I know that we need to survive now. So we are being the worst team, maybe, in history of Manchester United. I know that you want headlines, but I'm saying that because we have to acknowledge that and to change that. So here you go, your headlines.
So if you get your news in the way that I do, in the way that a lot of us do now, that will have come up as an alert on your phone that says, Ruben Amorim says Manchester United are the worst ever version of Manchester United. It's not quite what he's trying to say when you hear it in context, but it's still punchy.
It is quite punchy, but you're hearing somebody say that. But, like, Gaffer, we saw it. We was talking about it before. You feel... He's reading that. Someone's told him that before, you believe?
Yeah, he's been given that. He was actually reading it. His head was going down reading the bit about the history of the club. It's the worst run, blah, blah, blah. Someone's given that to say, look, you're probably going to get maybe hit with this question, get ahead of the game. I don't know whether he was wise in actually bringing it out, because it's been turned round, as you say,
Do you think it's because, as well, Kels, it might be the second language and it's not come out as clearly as he'd like to? Because we're talking about a long time ago, aren't we?
But I think it's quite blunt. It's not a kind of subtle point that he's trying to make where it would come in. You're the person who speaks languages, so we can ask you. But I don't think that... It doesn't feel like something that would necessarily get lost in translation. But as Glenn said, there is this fact that Manchester United have lost 6 games in a row at home for the first time since the 1890s. Years, and that's what he's referring to when he says this.
Yeah, I think he should have said that this run of home result right now is the worst ever in the history, pretty much.
In the history,
Not that this current team is the worst team that they've ever had.
Yeah, exactly.
Part of me also thought maybe he wanted to deflect a little bit the attention on, I give you a headline, this is your headline, more than how bad I've been, really, because he said it himself. I've done worse than the guy before who we all criticise all the time. And how bad this team has been. OK, the Liverpool game, the Arsenal game, were games where they defended really well. We give them that. They had a defensive plan. They executed it well. But as soon as they have to attack a bit more, as soon as they have to press a bit more and play a bit higher up on the pitch, especially at Old Trafford, they're struggling, and you go there and you pick them apart. That's what Brighton did.
Who do you think that's meant for, that message, when he talks about that? Is it to the press? Is it to the fans, to the owners?
Yeah, I think so. I think that I think they've bit off a lot more than they could chew. And I don't know if they realised what was happening when they were going to go to Man United and try to change what's happening there, especially with the Ten Hag tenure. You know, like we're talking about like £600 million they've spent in 3 years, and they've still got to rebuild a whole team, this guy. And this is why probably, Kels, when they were trying to appoint him at the start, remember he said he'll come at the end of the season. They said, no, you come now. I genuinely thought that would have been not a bad idea, so as he can see what he's got, get him to the end of the season and say, right, I know exactly what we need. But I did not expect Manchester United to be playing as badly as this, so like inconsistent. You know, like I remember after the Liverpool games and the Arsenal games, I remember after the Arsenal game, I think it might have been when he said, I'm not going to get excited about it. I want to see how we play against Southampton.
Learn more against
Southampton, against Brighton. And he's right.
It's when the game becomes open, when they're expected to play an open game at home against Southampton, against Brighton. That's the problems they've got in the system that he has. And that's what he's going to work out. What personnel can I do with certain games? For Liverpool and Arsenal and City away, not City away to a certain degree, they had a little bit of a smash and grab in the end, didn't they? But for Liverpool particularly, with the ball and defensively, they were spot on. And that would have given him a lot of hope. They actually did play longer. We did a show after that game. Yes. No goal kicks were played out from the 18-yard box. It was into the other. And they still had a lot of possession. So they still got enough possession to really play well against Liverpool and cause Liverpool, the best team in the country at the moment, a lot of problems in their own backyard. And I'm thinking, if he keeps going on that, you've got a chance, Man United. Suddenly, Southampton...
Is he not giving the same attention to what Southampton can do? Does he underestimate Southampton? Why wouldn't you do the same thing? Why don't you play the same way?
Well, both them games...
Southampton at home, can you?
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah, but you can go direct.
Yeah, but also, Ian, I think it's made for them to defend tighter against Liverpool away. Right. It's made for them against Arsenal away in the Cup, and go over to City and defend as a team collectively. And I'd say similar to Tottenham. Tottenham's the same scenario. They get results against the better teams because they're tighter. And actually, Man United are better. Now it's an open game, becomes more open. We're playing Southampton, we're playing Brighton, we're playing... Now we've got to take you on as a football team. Their system is failing them. It's failing them defensively then. And
that's down to him then, surely?
Down to him, and obviously mistakes. Players make mistakes, but there's a little bit of anxiety in their play. You can see it. And when there's anxiety and confusion, there's mistakes to come.
Yeah.
When you say they can't play like that at home to Southampton, is that because of perception?
Also, I don't think he wants them to. Let's not forget, although he's a disciple of Mourinho, and Mourinho is his mentor, always been his mentor, still is now, I think, he wants to be a more proactive, attacking coach, which his sporting team was brilliant to watch at times. And I think this is eventually where he wants to get to. And this is where I struggle a little bit, is that he wants to try to play that style of football, but this team is not ready. Whether it's a system problem and these 3-4-2-1 with two inside 10s, and he doesn't have the player for it. Maybe the player don't really understand exactly what he wants them to do right now with the ball. But he should think about result now more than anything else. So if you have to play long on Haaland, play long, don't play Zirkzee, because Zirkzee is a player to have the ball and control because he's that kind of number 9. Play long on Haaland, have two players really close to him, win the second ball, have Ugarte and Mainu quite close to their back three. Instead, like we were saying before the show, we watched the highlights of the Brighton game again. Brighton, literally, United players were cones on that pitch. There was no pressing, no pressure on the ball, just nothing. It was a training drill for Brighton this game.
And that's probably the more concerning thing for the manager. Isn't necessarily even maybe they got the tactics wrong, or maybe they feel they can't play like that in this game because it's at Old Trafford. But the fact that even with that, with all those caveats in place, if the intensity is not there and the work rate isn't there, nothing's going to work anyway.
Well, again, I go back to what he said. He said it's easy to get yourself up to play Liverpool and Arsenal. You know, the problem that they've got at the moment, as well as the fact that they don't seem to have a plan for the so-called lesser teams, is their mentality. The mentality is wrong. You can't play as well as you did against a team like you said. Liverpool, I think, are the best at the moment, easily. And then you even the Southampton game the other day, Hamad had to save them. You know, he had to save them with an hat-trick in 12 minutes. You know, they were on their way to losing against Southampton team at the bottom of the league. There's something wrong mentally with that team, and obviously, structurally, when they're playing against the Southamptons or the Brighton or anybody, they don't seem to have a plan to how to beat these teams.
I think if he goes into a Liverpool, he goes into a Man City, he goes into an Arsenal, even a Newcastle, his system, he'd make it work.
Yeah, I agree.
And we'd all be going, wow, what a good coach. At the moment, it's not going to work at Manchester United. And that's why I think he wanted to come in next season. And he wanted to get these plans. But, you know, now it's an experiment for him. He's thinking, who am I going to keep? He hasn't... He's inherited that squad. It's not his squad at all. And it won't be until next season's. But he's going to say, who am I going to keep? Who do I think I need to get out of? But the surprise was maybe you're sitting 8th, 9th, going for a European place whilst we're doing this as a manager. That's the vision. But now they're down, you know, down where they are. Lose another couple of games and they could be under immense pressure.
It's time to talk Manchester United. And Ruben Amorim described this Manchester United squad as possibly the worst Man United squad in history. I don't know why you guys are all smiling. It's not funny.
It's just been interesting seeing how charged you've been coming into work today.
Yeah,
I can't wait for this segment.
It's not been great. And to be honest with you, that assessment of where Manchester United currently are, in all seriousness, is valid. It is valid. You know, Manchester United, look where they are in the Premier League. You look at the league. You look at how the performances have been. You look at the lack of consistency, the lack of quality, the lack of positive recruitment. Is he just stating the fact, Manny?
I think so. And I can't remember a time when Manchester United have lost that many games at Old Trafford and it's looked that easy to come to Old Trafford, not just win, but dominate a game. It doesn't look like you're on the front foot ever. Even Southampton came and they looked for 75 minutes like they could have gotten a result. Unfortunately for them at the end, they crumbled. But I think you look really weak and I don't think he's wrong at all.
Quaker, for you, look, there's Ruben Amorim said, you guys like the headlines, you know, basically hear ones for you. Do you think that's to give a little bit of a shock factor to try and wake the players up, or do you think it's a dangerous line in terms of actually publicly stating that, you know, he basically thinks that this is the worst Man United team has been in history?
He's been very transparent ever since he walked through the door at Old Trafford. And I think that's what's been really refreshing about Ruben Amorim. He said it's going to take a long time. Think about 2 or 3 years ago when Rangnick took over as interim boss. He said this is going to require open heart surgery. He's just echoing those sentiments. And this is a Manchester United team that, in the big games against your biggest rivals, if you look at the game against Manchester City away from home, game against Arsenal, game against Liverpool, Manchester United turned up. But in the games against Southampton, Bournemouth, Brighton, those games where Manchester United need to assert their dominance, they've struggled. And I think Amorim's just being completely honest. And it's a shock to hear because it's such strong words, but I can understand why he is making it clear to everybody that this is a long-term project. And I do think he's going to be here for the long term, but there is a lot of work to do with this Manchester United squad.
There is an absolutely mammoth task to do at Manchester United.
Flex.
I know. Well,
Sorry.
it's going to take a while. We do know that AC Milan have called their interest in Marcus Rashford as it stands, potentially with them looking forward to take Kyle Walker. Borussia Dortmund have been mentioned for Marcus Rashford. Let's start talking about recruitment, Molly, because if Manchester United are going to get out of this mess or begin to unpack what's happened, it's got to start with recruitment for both ins and out. Marcus Rashford with Dortmund interest.
Yeah, I actually fancy Borussia Dortmund for Marcus Rashford. I think they've done a good job in looking after Jadon Sancho, quite frankly, after a similar situation when it comes to falling out with the hierarchy at Manchester United. They've put an arm around him and certainly looked after him to make sure he can flourish at the club. Daniel Marlin, his exit to Aston Villa frees up the space there for Marcus Rashford. I think for me, though, Marcus Rashford just has to play football. Game time is imperative for any footballer, and clearly he needs it, whether that be at Borussia Dortmund or at another club. He clearly wants to impress the England manager, Thomas Tuchel, and get back into the fold there with the World Cup just 18 months away. It's damaging for a player to not play football for this long, and given that he hasn't played now since December in that Europa League game against Pilsen, that's a long time without any football. He needs some confidence, and I think Borussia Dortmund could be the place for him there. That said, if Manchester United do keep hold of him, I think Ruben Amorim has to factor him into his plans. Has to.
You can't have a player like Marcus Rashford, who hasn't secured a move potentially at the end of this window, sitting there until the lights of August. So also moving on to another player, Manchester United's Alejandro Garnacho is under a lot of consideration from your club, Kwaku. Yeah. Chelsea, there's been talks there, or some interest there. There's been interest from Napoli as well. No formal bids or anything like that. But in terms of Chelsea potentially having a look at Alejandro Garnacho, can you see why? Do you need a player like that?
Chelsea have been relatively quiet in this transfer window. If we talk about it from a Manchester United point of view and an Alejandro Garnacho point of view, I always say that wing-backs are full-backs that want more or wingers that need less. Unfortunately, Garnacho doesn't fall into any of those categories. Garnacho is a proper winger. And unfortunately for him, you look at how Amorim sets up his sides, especially at Sporting Lisbon, doesn't play with traditional wingers. He plays with those narrow number 10s behind the striker and plays with wing-backs. I don't think Garnacho is a wing-back. And he's a man that's played a lot of football. Let's remember, he's only 20 years old. Last year as a teenager was very, very imperative and integral to what Manchester United did. A player that scored some important goals, some big goals for the football club. So I think the criticism for him or towards him this season has been unfair because he has had to do a lot, and especially at such a young age. In terms of Chelsea being interested in Garnacho, I don't know if there's too much legs in that story because Chelsea are well stocked in those areas. Think about the players coming in the summer as well for Chelsea. Esteval, a player that's very, very highly rated. I don't think Garnacho would necessarily suit what Maresca's looking to do at Chelsea, but I think the issue and the question surrounding Alejandro Garnacho is where does he fit into Ruben Amorim's starting 11?
Yeah, and I'll just say on that, I do think he is still a long-term prospect for Manchester United. It's clearly about developing the player away from there at the moment. But that said, I get actually quite conflicting messages from Ruben Amorim on that part because he was on the bench, yes, against Brighton, but before that he started the 2 previous games. So I'm not sure if it's nailed on that he'll definitely leave Old Trafford, but he clearly is, I think, a long-term prospect, given he is an academy player and could really flourish as a player. He's a great player at the end of the day, but he just needs to grow in confidence and fit into a style of play.
I think it's all about replacements. And another player who could be on his way out of Manchester United. Talks are ongoing between Real Betis and Manchester United over the loan signing of Antony. It's understood discussions are over a straight loan. Manny, obviously, Antony has not had the best of times at Manchester United, coming for a huge price tag. 1 goal this year against Barnsley in the Carabao Cup.
It's a strange one for me because when you look at Antony and what he was about, everything he was about at Ajax, it was confidence, flair, like almost that sort of arrogance that a football player and a winger needs, especially in that position. But when he's come to Manchester United, I always do say it is one of the heaviest shirts in football to come on and take that mantle and try and be that player who's going to make the difference. So obviously it's been a big shame for him. He showed a bit of a spark in the earlier games, but he's failed to carry that on. And with the scrutiny that he gets consistently put under, it's difficult for him. So I think a loan move could be good to maybe try and reignite his Manchester United career.
Well, there you have it. Loads of positivity around Manchester United. They will fix things. We will be back. It's been a good window. So
thoughts of Ruben Amorim in a moment. We should, of course, though, start with news of Denis Law's passing last week. Tributes paid to him at Old Trafford yesterday. For our younger viewers, which of course I class you as, Sue Smith, but he was a real legend, not just of this club, but of the game as well.
Oh, absolutely. And just listening to all of the tributes that have come in and watching all of the clips. I was actually lucky enough to meet him when I was a youngster. I was playing in a football tournament and he came and presented the trophies. And I remember sort of thinking what a lovely man he was. And then I remember going home and speaking to my mum and dad. And I said, we've won this tournament and we've just been presented these trophies. And Denis Law's presented the trophies. And I remember my dad going, "You've met Denis Law?" You know, he was absolutely astounded that he was there at the tournament. And then he told me about him, because I obviously didn't know too much about him as a youngster. And he just told me what a fantastic player he was in terms of course, his goal scoring, but also just the all-round play, the ability that he had. And I think you always remember, don't you, the goal celebration where he puts his arm up and he's got his sleeve sort of holding on to that. You always remember that. I think he's obviously got the statue outside Old Trafford. He's got the one in the Stretford end. And I think when you speak and you listen to people that have worked with him, played with him, they all just say what an unbelievable person and gentleman he was. So I think not only was he a fantastic footballer and the ability that he had, but it was also that he was just such a genuinely lovely man. So yeah, definitely thoughts and prayers are with everybody that knew him and his friends and family.
Yeah, and obviously he played a pivotal part in Man United actually getting relegated. At one stage, 73, 74. Let's get to the result of yesterday, and United missed the chance to record back-to-back wins. After the game, Ruben Amorim saying that they might be the worst team in Manchester United history. Now, that is quite a statement. What do you think his thinking is here?
See, I'm not really sure what his motive is for doing this. I was trying to think as a player, how would I feel if my manager came out and said that? I think probably I'd want to prove him wrong. I think that would probably be my first thought. then would I think if I was one of those players that's maybe lacking a little bit in confidence, which you can see there's lots of mistakes that's going on with Manchester United at the moment. There's certainly players that are lacking that belief and that confidence. So how would that then affect me in that way? And then I was also thinking, what would the owners think of that? So there's clearly something behind saying it. There's a reason behind saying it. Is he trying to take off that pressure of his team at the moment, that he knows it is a big task, it is a big job. So he's sort of saying, well, I don't have these players. We are the worst team at the moment and things are only going to get better. So I'm not too sure what his motive is. Not sure if it's the right way to go about it. I suppose only time will tell.
Do you think they are?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think at the moment they're certainly not performing the way that we thought that they would perform in terms of... It's difficult to say because obviously Amorim came in, he's completely changed the style, the way of playing. We said it's going to take time. Even when they got the good result against Everton, I remember him saying there's going to be storms, this isn't going to be smooth. It's always difficult when you do change a tactic, if you like, mid-season. We praised them when they beat Arsenal in the Cup. We praised them when they drew against Liverpool, and we said defensively they were sound, they were solid, they showed a real resilience, they showed a real discipline off the ball, which was we had to commend them for that. But then I was like, well, what are they going to be when they play against Southampton and they've got to actually go and attack teams? What is the sort of attacking way in this system? How are they going to do that, and will it work? And against Southampton, they were probably quite lucky, weren't they, in terms of 80-odd minutes, Southampton were the better side. Ahmad rescued them. So at the moment, we're still seeing a Manchester United side that are still moments in those attacking thirds. So that's something that he has to improve on. Defensively, again, we're seeing problems. And I know we're going to praise Brighton, but you have to sort of praise Brighton and the way that they exploited Manchester United's weaknesses yesterday.
Well, you mentioned Amad Diallo, so let's talk about him. Of course, got that hat-trick to win that game against Southampton that you were talking about there. He has, I guess, been the bright spark under this Amorim reign so far, but is there a danger they're relying too much on him, and when he doesn't produce, neither do United?
Well, that has been something that we've said, isn't it, for a long period of time, where it's always been on one particular player is going to stand out and make the difference, whether that's Bruno, whether that's Amad Diallo, whether that's Rashford when he had those sort of moments of excellence a few seasons back. And we're seeing it again with Amad Diallo. Where's his best position? Is it as the wing back? Is it as one of the number 10s? I quite like him centrally and with the ability to move out wide, but that sort of freedom in there. But he was the player that stepped up against Southampton. I think when we all thought, wow, this is a huge defeat to Manchester United after getting those couple of positive results, he was the one that stepped up and actually took the game by the scruff of the neck. I just think he really suits Amorim's way of playing, the energy, the intensity that he plays with off the ball, the runs that he makes on the ball, whether that's dribbling, whether that's passing and going. We've seen all sorts of things to his game, and he's still a young player, so he's still got time to improve. So he's a player that you look at when you look at this Manchester United side and you go, well, yeah, he fits that way of playing, but how many of the others fit that way of playing? It's probably not that many.
What about Joshua Zirkzee? Started the game, looked better.
Yeah.
Is that a fair comment? Can he take something from this performance?
Yeah, I think so, because you had to feel for him against Newcastle where things weren't going right. He got substituted before half-time. No player wants that. And a little bit of stick from the fans as well, a certain section of the fans. So that's tough. You've got to deal with that and you've got to put that behind you. And I think when he has played since, we have seen that sort of quality that he has got, whether that's linking play, the ability that he's got making those late runs into the box. Is he the number 9? Is he the answer to the number 9? I'm not too sure. I think Højlund's having a tough time of it at the moment. So again, he's trying to find the best solution in that area. But if you're looking at recruitment, it's certainly an area I think Manchester United would need to look at. You think if you had a top world-class centre-forward, Højlund would probably just be learning off him and coming in for certain games and playing 20 minutes here and 20 minutes there. But it's a lot of pressure on a young man to come in and take that responsibility. And, you know, at the moment, he's not quite finding his feet. But I think this is the problem with Manchester United in terms of this system that Ruben Amorim's playing. And I know there's been so much talk about the system and the tactics, but as an owner to Manchester United now, do you look and you go, OK, I believe in Amorim's system, I believe in what he's doing, I'm going to invest a lot of money into this system and I'm going to bring players in for him to play that system? Or are you a little bit worried that this isn't going to work and maybe Amorim isn't going to stay for the long term? Because they obviously did it with Erik ten Hag, where they decided to stick with Ten Hag. They give him a lot of money. He brought in his players. Ten Hag went, and now you've got players that are under the Ten Hag regime, not under the Amorim regime. So I think there's a bit of a situation there at Manchester United in terms of recruitment, and are they 100% buying into what Ruben Amorim's done, and is he going to take this team forward?
Yeah. We can't talk about United without discussing that error from Andre Onana.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on... I mean, it was a mistake. All humans make mistakes, but what about his long-term future at Manchester United?
It was a mistake, and like you say, you know, we all make mistakes. I think there's been times on this show where we've praised Onana for some brilliant saves that he's pulled off, but he is prone to big errors like that. And again, is that another area that maybe Manchester United will be looking at moving forward? But yeah, sometimes it can just be one of those things, can't it? When you make an error at a key point in the game at 2-1, you think, well, you're sort of still in it, aren't you? And you could even sense with the crowd when he made that error, you could sense the crowd like, oh, it's 3-1, this is going to be a real tough ask to get back into it. So yes, we've praised him for those key important saves that maybe he's made this season, but the best keepers probably don't make those sort of errors at key points. No, because the counter-argument is that's what a keeper's there to do, make big saves. At big times, That's why you pay him. It was a huge statement when they brought him in from Inter Milan in the summer of 23. David De Gea then kind of disposed of. But if you think about David De Gea, I mean, he's still only 34. And for a keeper, that's by no means over the hill, is it? And he's currently out in Fiorentina playing out there. Was that a mistake? Should they have stuck with De Gea? It's all hindsight, isn't it? I think sometimes you maybe look back and go, actually, was that the right decision at that time? Maybe it was the right decision for player and club at that point. But yeah, I just think it's so difficult, isn't it? Because I think Manchester United players, the team, they just get scrutinised with every mistake, with every bit of quality that they show. And when there is a mistake like that, it's obviously highlighted. So, yeah, he'll be looking at that, Onana, and saying, I need to be better moving forward. I need to be the keeper that makes the big saves and continue to do that. Because how many times have we said with Liverpool, with Manchester City, where, you know, it's the game's in the balance and they come out and make an unbelievable save and they go on to win it convincingly. We actually forget because of how good they are and because that's something that they continuously do. So as a top side, yes, you have to have that top goalkeeper. Mm-hmm. OK,